DEA, open the door, we're going to kick it in. And it felt like I was always drowning. Welcome to the Andrea Giovino Show. Today we're here with Brittany Diodati. And hi, Britt.
Hi. So I wanted to ask you some questions today. I wanted to know a little bit more about your indictment when you got arrested, and then like your relocation process and how it was kind of just being like plopped down into Pennsylvania to like start over. So can you walk me through the morning of your arrest?
That was probably one of the hardest days of my life. It was September 9th, 1992, not just September 9th, 1992. It was actually the first day for kids to go back to school. And I think the feds planned it like that for more humiliation. So 6 o'clock in the morning, my phone rang. And it was Indian summer, which was still very hot, because I remember I was sleeping with just a T-shirt and panties. The phone rang, and it was DEA, open the door, we're going to kick it in. And I was like, what? Like, I was like, DEA, it like startles you. It was just like in shock. So I run downstairs with just this T-shirt and panties, and there are agents coming in. There were 15 agents front and back. They were coming through the back downstairs, and they were coming through the front door. Andrea Giovino, you're under arrest for a RICO, for conspiracy to conspire, drugs, and this and that. And I was just like...
And who was home with you at that time? Who was in the house?
My 4 kids. The baby was in the crib, which were you. We were in the crib, and you were 15 months old, I believe. Keith was a little over, close to 2.5. This is 22 months apart. John was 10, and Toby was 16.
So it was just you and the kids.
Just
the DEA calls, they say, open the door.
Yeah, but now they're storming through the house, and the baby's screaming. I go, no, you can't get the baby. They're ripping. I grab my older son, Toby grabs the baby, and they're flipping the mattresses over in the baby's crib, thinking that I was harboring drugs, which I had no drugs, no guns, no nothing in the house. I would thought of putting money out on the streets. I didn't expect all of this to go on. And then,
so were you thinking that
I was completely in shock, that like I was in such shock. I stood there. All the agents were male. There was one female. And I remember saying, I need to go get a robe, because I was ashamed. I was like barely naked.
Yeah.
You know, I'm standing there naked in front of these, and they were doing it deliberately. I kept saying, I need a robe. I want a robe. And the female agent went up and she got me the robe, and she covered me and stuff like that. And I was just like, everything was happening so quickly. So by this time, it's, you know, they're searching through the house. They're reading me my rights. The kids are crying. They're saying, you know, the kids just sit on a couch. Like a lot, they were just like really... like you couldn't touch anything. Nobody could go in a room, because they think then maybe you're going to hide stuff. And I just said to them, I really just need to take a shower. I don't want to go like this. I want to take a shower. So they made the female officer go in the bathroom with me while I can take a shower and get dressed. And then I said, I need to have someone come to watch the kids. I can't leave the kids here. So with that, my neighbor came right away, till family came over to watch the kids. So I called the neighbor, and she ran over. And by this time, it's about 8:30 in the morning, because they were searching through the house, going through cereal boxes, throwing things out, and thinking what I was harboring.
Yeah.
It was really very, very, it was very, very stressful.
What do you think your neighbor's reaction was?
Well, so with this, they have to take me out of the house in handcuffs. And now, across the street, my brother lived, which he was getting arrested, so they shut the street down. Okay. The streets were shut down. There were news people out there, and all the neighbors were out. And I think that, you know, the female agent, she was on one side and the other, and to not humiliate me with the handcuffs, they just said, okay, she helped me put my sleeves down to not see the handcuffs and kind of just like hold me because it was so humiliating.
Sure.
It's a humiliating
of course.
feeling with other mothers looking down upon you like, oh God, she's a criminal. Look, her kids.
Yeah.
She's getting arrested. I think that the neighbors kind of knew something that, you know, we always had big, beautiful Lincolns in the driveway and, you know, we didn't bother with anybody because when you're in that kind of lifestyle, you don't really bother with the neighbors. You stay close to your own circle.
Sure.
So I'm sure they weren't, you know, from Staten Island. It was in Staten Island, on Highland, like off of Highland Boulevard, Tyson
They probably
Lane.
had some type of idea.
Oh my God, they
Like,
definitely
yeah.
had some type of idea. So with that, I get taken down to Cadman Plaza with, I don't know, it was like 30-something people arrested in my case, mostly all men, actually. I was the only female arrested in the case. And I think that at the time, my brother's wife was arrested also, but she was released from the case. She was never on an indictment and all that. I think that they took her down and then they just released her. I don't remember why because it was so long ago. I was so traumatized with myself. So when I get down to Cadman Plaza, after I was there, they throw me into, before this, like this big bow pen. It's
Like a holding cell.
like a holding cell by myself, you know.
Was there any other women in there?
Not anybody I knew. Yeah, there was all women in there, but not anybody I knew. And I remember like passing through the hallway, I saw my brother. And he said to me, when he looked at me, he just said, pull your hair back and fight. Like, you're going to have to fight. You know, he knew I would have to fight.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, you know, I'm from the streets. I wasn't afraid. I was going to.
Had you ever been arrested prior to this?
No, I was
So
never.
this was your first time like being put into like a precinct and a holding cell and anything
Yeah,
like
I mean,
that?
there's some tough
Yeah.
people in there. So
What were
when
you
my
feeling? Like
Well-
when he told you to fight, were you scared? Were
No.
you just like, fuck,
no,
I gotta really
fight.
just like
I got to fight. So I knew what he meant when he said, pull your hair back and fight. I went in to that bow pen, and here I am. And I went over because I figured I'm going to have to fight the biggest person in there. So if I'm going to fight and I'm going to get my ass kicked, I'm going to give it a good fight myself. You know, I'm from the streets. I knew how to defend myself. And I went over to the biggest woman, big woman. And I said to her, get the fuck up. I didn't sleep all night and I'm fucking tired. Just like that, because I knew if we're going to go in for it, let's go right now. Let's go for it. And she went, oh, shit, man, right. You're that mob chick. You're the one that just got arrested with, oh, sure, sit. As this is going on, they're watching me and they go, Giovino, out. They pulled me out and brought me in another room.
okay. They probably didn't want you causing
said
a
she-
brawl in the
They
holding
say she's going to
cell.
cause a brawl. They're going to beat the shit out of her. She's going to wind up dead in there. They're going to say, oh, she's crazy bitch. She's going to wind up dead. So I said, okay, you know, here we go. So they bring me into another room with the two agents that were the arresting agents, DEA agents, which was Steve Marchini and Frank Drew, I remember. And they were like, you better talk because there's people already talking and you want to get the first seat on the bus because if you don't get the first seat on the bus, you're facing 10 years in prison. And there was a female agent, her name was Eileen Dinnan, I'll never forget. And she said to me, you're facing a good 10 years, lady. We know what you did. So I was like, I don't know nothing and I'm not talking to anybody. I want my lawyer. Because I knew these were tactics. I wasn't stupid. I knew they were using tactics. You know, I just got arrested. I'm sure I just got arrested. There's not people cooperating. I mean, ultimately there was a guy cooperating, why I was pulled into the case. This guy, Joe Florenza from Pennsylvania, Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. He was like cooperating with DEA and he's the one that I gave instructions on the telephone because he owed money out to me, you know, for lending money and putting money up for drugs. I said, four guys that I had behind me working for me, go up there, get my money back. I don't care if you have to split his head open, but get my money. So I was arrested for that and conspiracy to conspire.
Okay.
On that
so
RICO.
what information do you think that the feds wanted you to give them initially?
I don't
Because all
think-
you did was lend money out
I
on the
don't.
streets.
I don't think they really. I think what they really wanted, because I kept saying I don't know anything, and they said, "Well, we backtracked you. You were hanging around John Gotti. You were with Mark Roddy. You were with Frank Lino." They knew that I knew, like they knew I was a street person, that I knew stuff. So I think later on I found out that it was a tactic that they used to arrest me so then my husband and my brother could cooperate, which my husband wasn't really my husband. He was my common law husband, which I think that what happened was they wanted, and he was already doing time in Tennessee on an 8-year bid for 100 pounds of marijuana. So I think that with that, they went ahead and they wanted them to cooperate, and I was a tactic to pull into the case so they could cooperate, because it wasn't just about the marijuana case. I think there were murders on the case, and they really had to like put a stop to that. There were murders. So that I spent the night in prison. I went in front of the judge the next day. It was a $100,000 bail. That's when I met Bettina Shine. She bailed me out. I used my house for collateral. And then when I got home the next day, when he called, John Fogarty called, I said, "John, you're going to have to help me out here." I said, "Because I know nothing about murders. I know nothing about what you did. I put money out, and I'm not going to prison for 10 years, and these kids are going into child services." And of course, he didn't want to do that, and I said, "Well, if you don't want to do that, that's what I'm up against. That's what I'm facing. And you're getting pulled into it too, because you're a part of it. You're out there. They're going to expedite you back and hit you with charges on this case. So you better help me out." So that's kind of what happened. And that's what my case was. And I think that.
So under the agreement that your husband at the time and your brother cooperated, you were then let go from all of your charges. You were released from the case.
The deal was made that, my name was released from the indictment. And I think that's when people found out other, co-defendants in the case, their lawyers said her name's not on the indictment. It's off the indictment. When the indictments came down, she's not on it. She was arrested, but she's not being indicted. So that usually makes them know somebody's cooperating. And then, so the deal was that I get released from the case with an expungement. There's nothing on my record. It was dismissed with upon their cooperation. And I think that at the time, if they didn't cooperate, my brother was a 3-time felon. He would have did life in prison. And, John Fogarty, your dad, would have been doing a lot of more time also, like, he was getting hit with all the other things, but I had nothing to do with what they were doing.
So what happens after the indictments get released and people don't see your name on it?
Well, when they don't see my name on it, then they know that somebody's cooperating.
Is that when initially you found out that there was a contract out on your life?
Well, not right around that time. When you get arrested, nobody else wants to come around you because they think you're hot. Nobody wants to go near you. They don't know what's going on. People in the streets get leery. So then that's what was happening. Actually, the next day when I got home and because when the government came, they took everything. They took whatever money I had in the house. They took jewelry. They took my cars. They literally said to me, "You own nothing. You own nothing. This is ours." They took everything. They stripped me completely naked. I had nothing.
And 4 kids to take care of.
And 4 kids. So I go to the bank. I had money in the bank. My accounts were frozen.
So what was your plan? Like, what were you thinking? Like,
I had
what
no
was your
car.
Next step?
I had no car. Because they took the cars. They said, "We own the cars." They confiscated everything. I go to the bank. The bank accounts were frozen. I had nothing, absolutely nothing. My sister brought over food. I remember my sister Paula brought over food, and I had to actually go down to welfare to get some food stamps. And I'll never forget, he had nothing. It was a friend of your father's that he grew up with, Tommy Meehan, I think is not Tommy Meehan, Tommy Mahon. Kid, he always had problems with drugs and all. He came over and he actually gave me his food stamps to buy food. I mean, I'll never forget that. that was really like nobody really just wants to come around you, and that's the kind of stuff happens.
Would you say that was like your rock bottom?
Oh my God, yeah. I had nothing.
Yeah.
I was stripped from everything. And on top of that, at this point, you know, I'm still facing prison time. You know, I don't know. I wasn't released from the case at this point. You know, all this was coming later. Then they come to me and say that there was a contract out on my life, that Mike Spinelli and Marianne Spinelli were conspiring with other people to have me killed. So John Fogarty and John Silvestri wouldn't cooperate. And then I go ahead and I was like, fuck it, I'm not leaving. I don't care. I didn't believe it. But then the wiretaps, Bertina wanted to see them and hear them. She heard the wiretaps and they got convicted on that and went to prison. So those were all facts that had happened. Then the government said, okay, well, you're not going in. Why would I go into witness protection? I said, I don't have to go into witness protection. I never cooperated. No, you got to go into witness protection, not to witness protection, but like to be relocated, because if there's a contract out on your life, God forbid the kids could get hurt, you're putting your children in danger. So that's kind of why I had to make the move to be relocated. And then being relocated was another trauma, because now I have no education. I have no husband.
So what was the deal of the relocation? They chose where you went?
Yeah, they chose.
Did they like help you get
They helped
started?
me. Yes, they helped me with everything. They helped relocate me, which basically they moved me. They got me out and moved me in the middle of the night, and found a location for me and said, this is a location that they check out, which is a very good schools, because they knew I had kids, and it's a very safe area. And, you know, it's a great area to raise children. And they put me in an area where directly across the street was a police sergeant that lived there, so they can watch over me. I didn't know that until like later on.
Okay.
That then they told me that there was the guy across the street. He's a police sergeant. He's there to watch over you. He lives there. We put you in a development where you'll be safe.
Okay.
So it was a very safe environment. But it was very hard. Of course, it was my rock bottom, because now I'm being relocated to another area, another state where I know no one. I have no one. I have kids to worry about. And I was extremely depressed. I was very, very down, very depressed. It was my rock bottom. I was lonely. All of the things I had done in my past, as far as the men I chose, the mistakes I've made, you know, the things I said and did that were all very wrong, were, you know, replaying as a tape back in my head, that, you know, this is my consequence, that you cannot do something wrong in life and think that it's not going to come back and bite you in the ass, because it very well did. It brought me to, you know, the ground, and put my face in the mud and squished it there to make me feel so much humility, which I did feel. But I think that I needed to feel that to understand what I did to my children first and foremost, and, you know, understand that my kids were basically, you know, my first priority.
How did you begin to rebuild?
I rebuilt by trying to keep myself strong. I connected right away with the church, my Catholic church, and a priest, Father John Davids, would come every Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock. He was my only friend that I had for 2 years, and I would speak to him. And then after that, I did that for 2 years, then I started seeing a therapist, and I worked on myself with therapy to try to develop and understand why I made the mistakes I made in the upbringing that I had, and the low self-esteem I had. I actually had no self-esteem, because when you have a good sense of yourself, you don't do the things you do. You don't have the anger you have. You don't lash out like that, and you don't pick the men that I picked. You know, if I had a good sense of myself, I would have chosen better. People say bad luck. It's not bad luck. It's the mistakes I've made, and I own that, and I understand that, and I accept that.
Yeah.
But
with no education, and really the only education you had was the streets, like what were your even options of like how am I going to make money for my kids?
That
like,
was
where
very
did you
that was very, very hard on me. Very hard. I utilized what I knew. I'm a street person, so I'm a survivor. I knew how to cook. I knew how to nanny. I started nannying for very wealthy families, doctors' kids, and I started cleaning houses from having a maid, a live-in maid I had, Grazia. She used to live with us. She was Brazilian housemaid on Staten Island. She lived with me for several years. From having a maid, I became a maid. I became a maid. I was cleaning people's houses to just survive.
That has to be like super humbling.
Very humbling. And I would take the kids with me late at night to clean these new home detailed cleaning. So there were big mansions, so I could make more money because you would get more money for that. So I'd have my kids, which were little, what you remember, scrubbing the tubs, using the toothbrush, because detailed cleaning means completely detailed. These people are spending $1 million on their homes. They want it completely beautiful.
Yeah.
So perfect. So I really humbled myself to do house cleaning and take care of other people's kids and cook. And I just utilized what I knew. I said, I'll work and understand what I know how to do for my family. And I did that for quite many years. And then I decided to write a book. And then with writing a book, that opened up a lot of doors for me.
Was it hard for you to fit into your new community? Like, did you have a hard, because in Staten Island, you're saying that like you kind of just like kept with your own, the people that like you grew up with, your family, the people in your own lifestyle, you didn't even really like bother with the neighbors. So then to be like tossed into now a completely different world of like rural suburbia is like, did you have a hard time fitting in? Did you like have a hard time making friends? Like, did you connect with any women? Like, how did
no,
you...
for the first 2 years, I didn't connect with anybody because I didn't want to. I didn't want to be asked questions. I was so depressed that you could actually feel it when you came into my home. My home didn't have a single picture on the wall. Nothing. It had nothing. It was like a box. That's the best way I could explain it now, thinking back. Like, it was like you come in and there's nothing, there's no pictures, there's nothing warmth, there's nothing of a home, because I felt that wasn't my home. I was placed there. So it was not my home. And I think that in itself was, I would never cry in front of my children. So I used to cry at night when I would take a shower. I would just sit in the shower and cry my heart out that I have to get up tomorrow and I got to be strong for my children, because I can't make them see me cry, because they're the only ones that they're depending on me to be strong for them.
Yeah.
So no, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to have friends with anybody. I was very aloof. And I think that looking back now, after 2 years, I met another woman in the development that someone else introduced me to her and said it was from the school. Oh, she has the same accent as you. Okay. And that's my friend Nadine that I'm still friends with today over 32 years.
Okay.
You know, 30 years ago. I met her because we started talking, and you know, her husband was an ex-police officer, and she knew there was something not right with me because she came into my home and she said she went home and told her husband that it just doesn't seem right. And the husband said, no, it doesn't seem right. There's something about her. And they knew something wasn't right. And then she confronted me, and then I opened up to her one day. She said, I just know something's not right with you. You know, my husband feels like you have to really just tell me the truth, or I can't be friends with you anymore.
And you did? You told her the truth?
I told her the truth, yeah. And she was like, oh my God, we knew something. But we're still, like family today.
Yeah.
You know, but it's a very humbling feeling. It's a very, when you get arrested to the level that I've gotten arrested, I mean, I understand a lot of men get arrested and the wife is holding up the fort. I was holding up the fort as the mother, the father, the breadwinner, it was just a lot of stress, a lot.
What do you think was the biggest challenge of starting over?
Oh God, this biggest challenge, scared every day of my life. How am I going to put food on the table for the kids, having to stay healthy? I remember I didn't have very much money, but I paid for an insurance policy, believe it or not. And I had an insurance guy come because I said, if something should happen to my kids, my first thought was my kids. They have to be okay. And I put my sister Ginger as the beneficiary. She knew that if something should happen, you'll have money, you'll take care of the kids. And it was a $200,000 policy. I made sure I paid that.
Were you worried ever after being relocated about anything happening to you, like that had to do with your old lifestyle or like people coming after you
I
for
I
your
didn't.
brother or husband
I wasn't
cooperating?
worried about that. I mean, I was always somebody that would look over my shoulders, and I don't trust anyone. Even till today, I trust no one. And I think that my son Toby suffered a lot with that because at this point he was like 17 and he would get up before he'd go to school and look under the car, which is terrible for a kid to deal with that, some stress and anxiety to see if there was a bomb under the car because back then that's what they were using, bombs.
Yeah.
So I put my
I mean, but as a mom too, that had to be like really hard to see your son dealing with that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've made some really big mistakes in my life and I've suffered the consequence for it. And, I might not have went to prison, but I was in my own prison. I was in my own prison in what was thrown at me. And
Did you ever feel like in that like darkest hour for you that there was like a light at the end of the tunnel? Like when did you finally feel like you were like getting your head above water?
oh God, that took a long time. It was never, I struggled so hard for so many years that it never felt like my head was above water. It felt like, I mean, it's very hard for me to talk about even now. It felt like I was always drowning. I was drowning. And I think that, with that, I, I always stayed close to God. I would pray and pray and pray, and I'd go to church and I'd speak to the priest and like, God, give me the strength to just get up tomorrow for these kids. God, help me to get through this. And I know I'm sorry for what I've done. I know, I'm begging you. I'm coming to you. That's all I had. That's really all I had. I had no one, no one. No one wanted to bother with me. No one wanted to be around me. And I think that it's a very lonely world because you just kind of lose everybody, whether I didn't cooperate, and my husband at the time, my common law husband, did cooperate. It's the same thing. It was like I cooperated because people felt, well, she told him to do it, so it's like, and I own that. And I owed that to my children. I still say that, I didn't cooperate. I never went in, but, I asked him to help me out of this for his children. That's the least you can do. So, because I had my own rough road with him, and we'll get into that on another, show of what I went through with even that. So I've always had a lot of stress in my life. And I think though now my head is above water. Finally, now in my old age, I love my older years.
Your old age.
Well, my older years. I think that I love who I am today. I don't have fear today. I've turned my fear to faith, and I feel like that my faith is so strong in God that He watches over me. Nothing bothers me. I don't care what people think of me. I feel that I have such a strong connection with God today that I'm okay. I'm okay, and I'm always going to be okay. I'm okay. That's basically where I'm at. I'm in a good place.
And you feel like looking back that these were the right decisions for you as far as like relocating, starting over, like
I think that if I wasn't relocated, because it wasn't really my choice to leave my home.
Right.
I didn't want to. I was actually forced into that because of the contract out on my life. I think that it was the best thing that could have happened to me because it woke me up. It made me like, this is what's supposed to happen to you for you to open up and change your life and develop into who you are today. And
if you could go back, and I think we'll wrap on this. If you could go back and say one thing to yourself in whether it was when you got indicted or like during that time before you got relocated, if you could go back and tell yourself one thing, what would it be?
What are you thinking, Andy? Like, what are you thinking? Like, I just think that I focused on all the wrong things. I think I was always starving to be loved and be cared for. I really do. I think I stayed in a relationship for that because I never got that growing up. And I think that I would have just said that, work on yourself, try to better yourself. Even at that age, try to go back to school and learn something better. And don't depend on a man. Stop depending on the man. I always depended on a man to take care of me. And that was out of fear. That was out of so much fear of not being able to function on my own. So I would probably just say, work on you. Like, why didn't you just work on yourself? I mean, even when I was relocated, I utilized what I knew. Clean, cook, cater to people. So instead of catering to a man, I catered to families by, rich families. So I utilized what I knew, but I would probably just have said to myself, like, what are you thinking? This is not going to get you anywhere by staying with someone for material things.
And then in your darkest time when you were relocated, like what would you tell yourself? Like, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, your life will get easier. Just like, would you give yourself any advice?
No,
like,
I didn't think there was a light at the end of the tunnel because I was in such a dark place. Of those first several years, I was in such a dark place. I just thought that I accepted my life for heartache. I accepted my life to raise my children and to do what I was doing and just try to better myself in any way I can and work and be tired and raise 4 kids. As you know what it's like to raise children. I was raising them alone by myself. So I was tired all the time. I was always so tired. Get up in the morning, start again, get up, go to work, come back, clean people's houses, take care of the kids, make sure there's food on the table, try to get them to sports, try to get them involved, try to keep them in a community where no one knows that they have a family that's struggling. So I would never buy myself anything. I would buy it for them, make sure they go to school with nice clothes, they go to school with nice shoes, and not give it to me. I always gave to the kids first before me. So it's still very hard for me to take care of me because I'm a giver and I give and I give and I give till I have nothing else to give. Yeah. So that's just who I am today. And, and I always give back. I'm always going to help someone. I try not to hold on to grudges with people. I try to, be the best person I could be, but I am a tiger inside. If you poke me, no matter how spiritual I am, it's very hard for me not to come back at you. It's just who I am. It's my skin. It's the way I was raised. Yeah. I'm going to come back at you.
Well, listen, thank you for sharing all of this with us. I know it's hard for you even now, 30 years later.
It's very hard.
I mean, I can see it in your face.
Yeah, it's very hard.
Thank you. And I think if anything, you just have to also find peace in that, the more you share your story, you can just help more people.
And that's all I want to do. I want to help, give back, and that's it. But thank you for helping me to get that out. It's growth. It's painful for me. It's very, very painful for me. It's painful where I'm holding in the heartache right now. But thank you all. Thank you for tuning in. This was a very, very hard topic for me. It was a very hard discussion for me to have. Brittany brought that out in me. And please be sure to comment. Please be sure to subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be having on a lot of wonderful guests, things that you will enjoy, and we'll tune in again. Thank you.